You're going to hate me for what I'm about to tell you, but I saw it with my own eyes, and I can't stay silent anymore. The famine of 2026, the one everyone's going to panic about when the news finally admits it, has already begun. Right now, while you're watching this. And I know this because I died, and what Jesus showed me on the other side changed everything about how I see what's coming. My name is Elena Ramirez, and I'm a 42-year-old trauma surgeon. I've spent the last 18 years in emergency rooms, dealing with the worst moments of people's lives. Gunshot wounds, car accidents, cardiac arrests. I've seen death up close more times than I can count. I thought I understood it. I thought I'd seen everything. But I was wrong. 3 months ago, I was driving home after a brutal 30-hour shift. My eyes were heavy, my mind foggy. I remember the traffic light turning green, then the blinding headlights of a truck running the red light, and then nothing. The impact crushed the driver's side of my car. My ribs shattered. My lungs collapsed. My heart stopped beating. I was clinically dead for 11 minutes. What happened during those 11 minutes is something I still struggle to put into words. At first, there was nothing. Absolute darkness. Not the kind of darkness you experience when you close your eyes in a dark room. This was the absence of everything. No sound, no sensation, no awareness of my body. Just void. Then, suddenly, I felt warmth. Not physical warmth, but something deeper, like liquid sunlight pouring into my consciousness. The darkness began to dissolve, and I found myself standing in a place I can't fully describe. It wasn't a location in the physical sense. It was more like being inside light itself, surrounded by a presence so overwhelming that every cell of my being knew I was in the presence of something sacred. And then he appeared. I don't know how I knew it was Jesus. There was no voice from heaven announcing him, no introduction, but the moment I saw him, I knew. His eyes held a depth that seemed to contain all of time and eternity. When he looked at me, it felt like he was seeing every moment of my life simultaneously, every secret, every wound, every regret. But there was no judgment in his gaze, only a compassion so profound that I felt tears streaming down a face I no longer had. He didn't speak with words at first. His presence communicated directly to my soul. And the first thing I understood was this: I brought you here because humanity needs to hear what I'm about to show you. My initial reaction was confusion. Me? I'm just a surgeon. I'm nobody special. I've spent most of my adult life working 70-hour weeks, barely attending church, questioning whether God even existed. Why would he choose me? But before I could voice those questions, he extended his hand toward me, and suddenly the light around us shifted. It became a window into the world I'd just left, but not the world as I knew it. This was a vision of what was happening right now and what was coming. The first thing I saw made my heart sink. I saw grocery stores empty. Not just a few bare shelves like during the pandemic, but completely stripped. Row after row of nothing. I saw families standing in food lines that stretched for blocks, children with hollow eyes clinging to their mothers. I saw fields that should have been green with crops turned brown and barren. I saw protests turning violent as people fought over dwindling resources. But what shook me most was the geography. This wasn't some distant, abstract future. Jesus was showing me specific places, specific people, specific suffering happening right now. Gaza. I saw Gaza. 500,000 people on the edge of starvation since July this year. Families rationing single meals across entire days. Mothers boiling grass to feed their children because there's nothing else. The world calls it a humanitarian crisis. Jesus called it the beginning. Then the vision shifted to Sudan. 22 million people, half their entire population facing acute hunger right now as we speak. Not in some distant future, but today. Children dying from malnutrition while the international community debates and delays. I watched a mother hold her dying son, whispering prayers that felt like they were falling into an empty sky. The vision kept expanding. Across the world, 280 million people woke up in severe hunger this morning. Not in 2026, this morning. This is the first time this century we've had dual famines happening simultaneously on this scale, and most people in wealthy nations have no idea. I felt overwhelmed, suffocated by the weight of so much suffering. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Jesus was holding my awareness there, making me see what most of the world refuses to acknowledge. "Why are you showing me this?" I finally asked, my voice breaking. "I'm just one person. What can I do?" His response wasn't gentle. It was firm, almost urgent. "This is not coming. This has already begun. The world calls it crisis. I call it the birth pangs." Birth pangs. The phrase echoed through my consciousness. I remembered the biblical references, the warnings about the end times, the signs that would precede his return. But this felt different. This wasn't abstract theology. This was real people, real suffering happening right now. Then the vision shifted again, and what I saw next made the current crisis look like a warning shot. The year 2026 appeared before me like a banner written in fire. Jesus spoke, and his voice carried a weight that made the spiritual realm itself seem to tremble. 2026 will be the year the world can no longer deny what I've been warning through my servants. What is scattered suffering now will become concentrated catastrophe. I saw Nigeria, 30.6 million people facing acute food insecurity, entire regions descending into chaos as food supplies collapsed. I saw Ethiopia, 21 million people on the brink. I saw the Democratic Republic of Congo, 27.7 million, their suffering compounded by conflict and climate disasters happening simultaneously. The vision expanded to show me the interconnected systems collapsing. Climate change disrupting harvests, conflicts cutting off supply chains, economic greed driving food prices beyond what ordinary families could afford. Jesus' voice cut through the images. Conflict, climate, greed. The horsemen ride together. But this is also preparation for hearts to turn back to me. I didn't want to believe it. Every rational part of my medical training, my scientific mind, rebelled against what I was seeing. I argued with him. How could a loving God allow this? How could suffering on this scale be part of any divine plan? His response shattered my resistance. I don't cause it. I warn about it. The question is whether you'll prepare spiritually or pretend it's not happening. The words hit me like a physical blow. He wasn't talking about stockpiling food or building bunkers. He was talking about something deeper, something most people, including me, had been ignoring our entire lives. The famine of the body was a sign, but there was another famine coming that most wouldn't see until it was too late. I stood there in that realm of light, feeling the weight of 280 million people's hunger pressing against my consciousness, understanding for the first time that 2026 wasn't some arbitrary date. It was a threshold, a point of no return where the warning signs would become undeniable catastrophes. And I realized why he'd brought me here, why he'd shown me this. It wasn't because I was special. It was because I was willing to say what everyone else was too comfortable to admit. The famine has already begun. But that wasn't the worst part of what he showed me, not even close. Jesus turned to look at me again, and this time his expression carried a sorrow so deep it felt like the universe itself was mourning. He spoke slowly, deliberately, making sure I understood every word. The famine of food is a sign, but there's a deeper famine most won't see coming. I felt a chill run through my spiritual body. What do you mean? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, the light around us began to shift again, the vision changing into something I wasn't prepared for. What he revealed next about 2026 made the food crisis look like a warning shot. The light around me shifted again. Suddenly, I wasn't just watching global food crises anymore. I was standing in what looked like a modern church. Beautiful building, state-of-the-art sound system, comfortable seats, a massive screen displaying perfectly choreographed worship graphics. But something was wrong. I could feel it. The room was full of people, but it felt spiritually empty, like a restaurant with beautiful decor but no food being served. Jesus turned to me and said something that made my chest tighten. Humanity is starving for me. The food crisis you're seeing in the physical world is just a manifestation of a spiritual reality that's been growing for years. Then the scene changed. I saw people scrolling endlessly on their phones, trying podcasts about self-improvement, jumping from one spiritual teaching to another. Crystals, manifestation techniques, motivational quotes, everything except the one thing that could actually fill them. And I realized I'd been one of those people, searching everywhere for meaning, for peace, for something real, but never actually surrendering to the source of it all. His voice was compassionate but firm. They're trying to fill a God-shaped void with everything except God. And the emptier they get spiritually, the more desperate they'll become physically. That's the connection most people miss. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say people are doing their best. But he already knew what I was thinking. 2026 is the year of choice, he said, and the authority in his voice made everything else go silent. It's not the end of the world. It's the acceleration. The physical famines you see now, they will worsen. But the spiritual famine will create the greatest harvest of souls I've seen in generations. Suddenly, I was seeing two paths, like a fork in a road, but these paths weren't just directions, they were destinies. On one side, I saw people in the middle of crisis, food shortages, economic collapse, fear everywhere, but they were turning to him. Really turning to him. Not religion, not church programs, not feel-good spirituality, actual surrender, actual relationship. And even though their circumstances were hard, there was this light in their eyes, this peace that made no logical sense. They were physically lacking but spiritually overflowing. On the other path, I saw people in the same crisis, same shortages, same fear, but they were turning to everything else. False prophets promising easy solutions, governments offering security in exchange for freedom, spiritual teachers selling shortcuts and manifestations. A marketplace of deception so crowded and so loud that people couldn't hear the truth even when it was right in front of them. And I realized this wasn't just about food. It never was. It was about trust. It was about what you run to when everything falls apart. He wasn't just warning me about food shortages, I heard myself thinking. He was warning me about a choice point for humanity's soul. The two paths kept diverging, getting farther and farther apart, and I could feel the weight of it. The urgency. This wasn't some distant prophecy. This was soon. This was now. This was the world I was about to go back to. Then he spoke again, and this time his words felt like they were being written on my heart. Permanent. Unmovable. "Tell them this," he said, and his eyes held mine with an intensity I'll never forget. "The famine has already begun, but I am the bread of life. Those who come to me will never go hungry spiritually, even if their bodies face physical lack. 2026 will separate those who trust me from those who trust systems, governments, stockpiles. I am preparing my people." Tears were streaming down my face. I don't know if I had a physical face in that moment, but I felt them. Hot. Real. I felt the weight of his love and his grief at the same time. He loved humanity so much, but so many were going to choose the wrong path. "I don't want to go back," I whispered. "I don't want to tell people this. They're going to hate me." His hand was on my shoulder. I felt it. Warm. Solid. More real than anything I'd ever felt on earth. "I know," he said, "but I'm not sending you back to be loved. I'm sending you back to save lives." And in that moment, I stopped arguing. I stopped being afraid. I understood. Then everything went white. Suddenly, I was back in my body. The alarms were screaming. People were shouting. pain exploded through my chest as they shocked me again. My lungs burned as air rushed in. The fluorescent lights were blinding after all that heavenly light. Everything felt harsh, cold, heavy. But I was different. I opened my eyes, and the first thing I said was, "He showed me 2026. The doctors thought I was delirious. They told me to rest. They said my brain was just recovering from oxygen deprivation. But I knew better. I came back knowing things I shouldn't know, seeing things I shouldn't see, understanding patterns in the world that I'd been blind to before. I came back with a message I didn't want to deliver because I knew exactly what would happen. People would call me crazy. They'd say I'm fear-mongering. They'd accuse me of starting a panic. And honestly, I'd rather be silent. I'd rather keep this to myself and live a quiet life. But I'd rather be hated for telling the truth than silent while people spiritually starve without even knowing why they feel so empty. So here's what I'm telling you. Since I came back, I've been watching. I've been paying attention. And everything he showed me is unfolding exactly as he said. This isn't speculation anymore. Food allocations in conflict zones have dropped 45% this year. 20 separate food crises are affecting 140 million people right now. The global systems that we've trusted to keep us fed are starting to crack. And 2026, it's not some random year. It's the acceleration that's already in motion. The timeline he gave me wasn't to scare me. It was to prepare me. So I started preparing. Not with stockpiles, though. I'm not saying don't be practical. I started preparing my heart. I started building an actual relationship with Jesus. Not the religious version I grew up with. Not the cultural Christianity that's more about appearances than presence. A real, living, breathing relationship with the one who showed me what's coming. I started reading scripture differently. Not as a historical text, but as a conversation with someone I actually know now. I started praying differently. Not reciting formulas, but talking to someone who already knows my thoughts before I speak them. I started serving differently, not out of obligation, but out of overflow. And I found others, people who'd heard similar warnings, people who felt the same spiritual restlessness, people who knew deep in their bones that the world is shifting and we need to be ready. We started praying together, serving together, preparing our hearts together. Because if 2026 is the acceleration year, we don't have time to waste pretending everything's fine. We don't have time for shallow faith and spiritual entertainment. We don't have time to keep filling the God-shaped void with distractions. Now I know what you're thinking. I know some of you are already angry. I know some of you think I'm just another fearmonger trying to manipulate you. I know some of you have already decided I'm crazy or delusional or making this up for attention. And honestly, I get it. I would have thought the same thing before I died. But here's the thing. I did die. I was gone for 8 minutes. I met Jesus. Not a vision. Not a hallucination.